Government ready to tackle beauty and fitness services prepayment practices. Online concert ticket fraud cases go up by 20% year-on-year. US and Iran may still return to negotiating table after days of tit-for-tat attacks. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The beauty and fitness industries are being spotlighted as the government launches a public consultation on amending the Trade Description Ordinance regarding prepayment consumption. Sudden closure of large fitness chains and beauty groups is being cited as a primary reason for the assessment. The proposed amendments will seek to provide a framework for duration of contracts, refunds, and opt-out mechanisms for consumers after they've signed contracts. Gloria Feng has more.
The government is launching a 2-month public consultation on policy proposals relating to the Trade Descriptions Ordinance, with the aim to further protect consumers engaging fitness and beauty services. Sudden closure of beauty and fitness establishments have triggered financial losses for many consumers who engage in prepayment services, prompting the proposed amendment. In a statement, the government details the unfair trade practices, such as improper selling tactics and prepayment schemes, pose considerable risks to consumers. The proposal seeks to introduce guardrails to protect consumers from entering long contracts and substantial prepayment plans while being subjected to aggressive, high-pressure selling tactics, practices the government says are highly concentrated in the two industries. The statement also reviews beauty and fitness establishments account for half of all consumer complaints relating to incorrect payment charges. As such, the government is putting forth 3 policy proposals targeting sales and contracts. First, it introduces a statutory 7-day cooling-off period and a 14-day refund window for prepaid service contracts. Second, prepaid contracts will be capped at 24 months, while those that take effect more than 3 months after signing will be banned. Finally, the amendment seeks to add the offense of wrongly accepting payment to Schedule 1 of the Organized and Serious Crimes Ordinance. This will grant the Customs and Excise Department broader investigative and enforcement bandwidth to tackle these cases. The government will be briefing the industries and taking up suggestions to refine the proposal over the next 2 months. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
Police recorded nearly 4,000 cases of online shopping fraud in the first 5 months of this year, involving a total of 140 million Hong Kong dollars. Approximately 30% of the cases are related to the sale of concert tickets. 78 people have been arrested. Andy Ziauden reports.
According to the Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau, authorities launched an operation this month to combat online shopping fraud and money laundering. A total of 59 men and 19 women were arrested. 69 of them held dummy accounts involving 165 fraud cases. Among the near 4,000 online shopping fraud cases which took place in the first 5 months of this year, concert tickets fraud topped the list, followed by the sales of electronics and baby products. Police believes that due to the nature of concert tickets having limited supply and high demand, a lot of consumers would overlook the importance of checking the background of the sellers. The fraudsters would exploit this while carrying out scams through social media like Carousel, Facebook, and Threads. Officials also highlight that in some cases, criminals turn their victims into accomplices to lower the risk of being caught and to expand their network. Police warns that agreeing to post advertisements on behalf of others or allowing strangers to use personal bank accounts for transactions could expose citizens to legal consequences. And this is Xiaodin, TVB News.
The Legislative Council's Public Works Subcommittee approved expansion works for the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter, with the project involving approximately $2 billion. The plan is set to be further reviewed by the LegCo Finance Committee. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Amid the government's increasing efforts to drive the city's yacht economy, suggestions were earlier raised to expand the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter on Hong Kong Island. Under the current expansion plan, the Typhoon Shelter will be expanded by 24 hectares to meet the increasing demand for berths, while another 2 breakwaters and wave protection walls will be constructed to deal with harsh weather conditions. The infrastructure upgrade also aims to provide a public disembarkment point as well as leisure facilities. Authorities are planning to complete the project within 4.5 years. This, as the expansion works proposal was subject to a review by the Legislative Council's Public Works Subcommittee.
In Monaco, in Italy, in Barcelona, there are similar facilities, and they're famous. And that in these countries, I see holistic planning. It's not just about increasing berthing space. So if Ocean Park situation does not improve, then there'll be an eyesore to have this facility next to the berthing areas. When it comes to the yacht economy, we should not just develop berthing facilities. We also need onshore facilities in support of the idea. An integrated development approach will be undertaken. That means there'll be private residential development.
Recalling the heavy damage caused by Typhoon Regasa to seaside areas last year, some lawmakers raised concerns about the ability of the expansion works designed to sustain the effects of extreme weather.
With that experience, you are proposing an 80-meter wave wall. Are you going to do a test on the model to make sure that it will be resilient against super typhoon? We have incorporated data that we collected during super typhoons previously. We also adopted a 3D model to do the testing, so the current proposed design of the breakwaters will be able to cope with high greenhouse gas emissions.
Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Death toll mounts to 1,450. Following rescue efforts that see international aid workers flocking to Venezuela after two deadly earthquakes left much of La Guaira and Caracas in shambles. As residents continue to search for survivors and loved ones 4 days after the initial shock, signs of life are coming through the cracks of rubble. Meanwhile, in Trinidad and Tobago, traces of the earthquakes are being found along the coastline where the earth has cracked open. Gloria Feng has the story.
Local and international rescue teams race against the clock to pull survivors from the rubble in Venezuela, 4 days after two powerful 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude earthquakes shook the northern state of La Guaira and the capital Caracas. The government is facing growing criticism about its inadequate rescue efforts that are being overshadowed by civilian-led searches. More than 2,600 rescue workers from around the world had arrived by Sunday, the government said, noting crews were being supported by nearly 140 specially trained dogs to search rubble. Thousands are still reported missing, according to multiple databases used by families searching for loved ones. In La Guaira, a mix of rescue teams and civilians continue to work relentlessly to find survivors.
What we're seeing behind me is rescuers from mostly other countries and dozens of Venezuelans working as fast as they can to find their loved ones. This continues to be mostly a citizen-led effort. We can see a few more soldiers from Venezuela than we saw in previous days. But again, it's mostly neighbors, friends, relatives who are searching for their loved ones.
Even as the likelihood of finding survivors diminishes with each passing hour, rescuers continue to free people from mountains of debris, offering anguished families a sliver of hope. This resident looking for his relatives says despite government thermal cameras indicating there are no signs of life, the community never lost hope and eventually located 3 trapped survivors. Their relentless search is fueled by good news from a nearby site. There, 32 hours after they had been trapped, an 18-month-old baby and his mother were pulled from what remained of their apartment building. Both are in stable condition when rescued and are recovering in a hospital in Caracas. Meanwhile, the impact of the 2 quakes were also felt in neighboring Trinidad and Tobago. In the southwestern village of Cedros, the coastline shifted upwards, pushing the sea further away from land, revealing cracks along the shores. The coastline have since been elevated as high as 20 feet above water, with sea creatures found dead on the beach. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
A 5.5 magnitude earthquake rattles Yibin City in southwest China's Sichuan province, with local media reporting 13 people injured and close to 200 residents evacuated. The quake struck at just after midnight Monday, with its epicenter located in Gaoxian County at a depth of 6 kilometers, according to the China Earthquake Network Center. Some walls and buildings near the epicenter were damaged, and tremors were felt in regional hubs including Chengdu City and Chongqing Municipality. Local authorities have begun assessing the extent of damage and are conducting inspections to address potential risks. Power, water, and telecommunication services remained stable, local authorities report. The U.S. and Iran have agreed to stand down for now after mutual attacks in and around the Strait of Hormuz over the past few days. And the two sides plan to renew talks in Doha, Qatar on Tuesday to work out their dispute, according to U.S. media reports. Danny Zhou tells us more.
Yesterday, the U.S. Central Command released footage purportedly showing strikes and bursts of smoke on Iranian facilities that it said their Navy and Air Force fighter jets carried out in response to another alleged ship attack in the Persian Gulf. Tehran has answered with drone and missile strikes targeting Bahrain and Kuwait, two American allies in the region, while threatening to completely pause negotiations to end the war. A video released by Iran's military is said to show missiles being fired at undisclosed locations earlier that day. The 4-day cycle of back-and-forth strikes has once again strained the framework understanding signed on June the 17th that was supposed to halt fighting during 60 days of negotiations.
It's only been a week since Vice President J.D. Vance wrapped up his meetings with Iran, but already the preliminary agreement meant to wind down the war appears to be unraveling. This back-and-forth violence stems from disagreements over the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. says that under the interim deal, the strait is supposed to be open to international shipping. Iran closed the strait during the war, and it's trying to retain some control there as leverage in these ongoing ceasefire talks.
Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which once carried a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas, remains a fraction of pre-war levels. Iranian authorities have insisted the imposition of a toll system for all ships transiting the strait, saying Tehran alone is responsible for managing and fully reopening maritime traffic. Media reports indicate a growing number of vessels seek to take a southern route off the Omani coastline, which is expanded by the U.S. Navy to evade Iran's oversight, whereas Tehran issues warning that any attempt by ships to bypass its preferred route would increase tensions. According to multiple U.S. media, Washington has agreed with Tehran to stop all the kinetic activity and talks will remain on track. Pakistan, a key mediator, says U.S.-Iran negotiations are expected to resume Tuesday on the terms of their interim deal. The meeting was originally set to take place in Switzerland and centered around Iran's nuclear program, but later moved to Doha, shifting the focus to shipping security. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says on Monday $6 billion of Iran's assets held in Qatar should be released and returned to the country as negotiations with the United States were challenged by recent hostilities at sea. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
And still ahead, Vladimir Putin admits energy shortage amid Ukrainian attacks. Chinese factories work round the clock to keep up with European cooling products demand. And wildfire kills 3 firemen in U.S. state of Colorado. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin acknowledges for the first time that his nation was facing a certain deficit of fuel and vows to strengthen protection of oil facilities and boost fuel output. This as the Ukraine continues its heavy drone assault on Russia, setting fire to a major oil refinery in the south of the country. Danny Rao tells us more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin held a meeting with officials on fuel supply issues in Russia. Putin acknowledges ongoing fuel problems across the country. He says, unfortunately, there are also queues at petrol stations and finding the right grade of petrol isn't always easy. Putin says oil refineries were operating at maximum capacity. Repairing schedules had been shortened or postponed, and by July, according to forecasts, production of key fuels should exceed June levels. Putin adds previously accumulated fuel reserves had been released onto the domestic market, and petrol stockpiles were now roughly in line with levels seen at the same time last year. Russia faces a fuel shortage across the country as Ukraine has increased long-range attacks on Russian energy sites to cut Moscow's war revenue and pressure Putin. This campaign aims to bring the Russian president to the negotiating table. Putin says the Ukrainian strikes will have absolutely no effect on the situation on the front. Putin's comments come as the Russian ruling United Russia Party gathered for Congress, where it composed the list of candidates for an upcoming parliamentary election and formed an election program. Putin tells the delegates, saying that it's the duty of united Russia to do everything possible to ensure victory in the military operation in Ukraine. Meanwhile, a Russian airstrike on Zaporizhia killed 2 people and injured 16, including 2 children. The strike also destroyed a private house and car. In Russia's border region of Belgorod, Ukrainian drone strikes killed 1 person and injured another. Russia's defense ministry says its forces shot down 213 Ukrainian drones during the night, including over Russia, occupied Crimea and the Black and Azov Seas. Russia also attacked Ukraine with 142 long-range strike drones and 8 missiles overnight. Of those, 125 drones and 7 missiles were struck down. Dan Arel, TV News.
The heat wave continues to cast over much of Europe, with Czech Republic among the latest countries to experience record-shattering temperatures. And as Europeans flock to buy air conditioning, there's a surge in demand for Chinese-made units and other creative heat-busting gadgets. Gloria Feng has more.
Umbrellas and fans in tow, Czechs are misting themselves to cool down as temperatures surge to record highs across the country. The Czech Meteorological Institute says the temperature soared to 41.1 degrees Celsius in the northern town of Doksany Sunday, beating the previous day's record by more than 1 degree. The heat wave that's been baking Western Europe has now moved to central and eastern parts of the continent, with the mercury soaring to record highs from Switzerland to Denmark. In France, where the sun has been scorching for days now, lightning struck the iconic Eiffel Tower as a thunderstorm rages across the Parisian sky. The country's public health agency says France saw heat-related deaths surge to more than 1,400 last week at the height of the record-smashing heat wave. The numbers may continue to rise, the agency cautions, as more data is being collected. As slews of Europeans seek relief, sales of air conditioning and other cooling devices are taking a sharp rise. Thanks to cross-border e-commerce, Chinese manufacturers are riding this historic heat wave. This vendor at the Yiwu International Trade Market says sales are up about 20% year-on-year thanks to the increase in demand for cooling products across Europe. A rush of export orders have pushed upstream manufacturers into full gear. The manager of a Ningbo-based manufacturer says the heat wave has spiked demand for small household and portable outdoor ice makers by 70% compared to the year previous. Gloria Feng, TVB News.
French Interior Minister Laurent Nunez describes the crash of a skydiving plane in northeast France that killed 11 as an extremely significant tragedy. This as details reveal some families watch in shock as the skydiving plane carrying their loved ones on what was meant to be a thrilling introduction to parachuting took a tragic turn. Standing meters from the crash site at the Nancy-Essay airfield on the outskirts of the city of Nancy, Nunez says there were 5 instructors and 5 people participating in introductory jumps plus the pilot. The plane suffered malfunction and fell almost vertically soon after takeoff. Nunez commends the emergency services for their very rapid intervention. 3 firefighters were killed in Colorado as heat and wind drive an uncontained wildfire along the state's border with Utah. Blistering heat and strong winds fuel wildfires across the western U.S., with conditions turning deadly in Colorado. Tragedy struck Saturday when 3 firefighters were killed and 2 others suffer burn injuries. They were overcome by fast-moving flames that cut off all escape routes, despite deploying emergency shelters. The National Weather Service warns of extreme fire behavior along the Utah-Colorado border, where rapid fire growth is likely. The Four Corners region, where Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah intersect, remains under critical risk. The Commerce Ministry in Beijing is widening export curbs on Japan by targeting its drone makers and defense institutions, citing the country's ambitions for remilitarism. On Monday, the ministry adds 20 Japanese entities to its export control list for dual-use items, which prevent Chinese exporters from selling them without prior approval. The listed entities include Japan's National Institute for Defense Studies and several subsidiaries of Mitsubishi, Komatsu, and Fujitsu, as Beijing seeks to limit Tokyo's new type of militarism as well as nuclear ambitions. The ministry stresses relevant measures do not affect the normal bilateral economic and trade exchanges and reassures law-abiding Japanese firms and organizations operating in good faith to have no cause for concern. Dual-use items are products, technologies, and materials with both civilian and military applications. Recalling the last 4 years, Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan said The current government completed large amounts of work ranging from Article 23 legislation to civil service reforms. He stressed the administration will focus on the implementation of the first 5-year plan in the city, with the development of the Northern Metropolis University town being a priority. Timothy Lee reports.
Having visited Hong Kong during his inspection tour earlier this month, Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Xia Baolong, made his way to the selected site for the development of the Northern Metropolis University town. Speaking as the head of the working group on the planning and construction of the university town, Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan said the area will also provide other facilities supporting relevant industries. Chan noted the government's partnership with industries on site does not stray away from the educational nature of the town, but rather provides new opportunities for businesses to settle in the area, allowing students to assist them via research work. Addressing the earlier report on the impact of targeted poverty alleviation strategy, the Chief Secretary for Administration noted authorities have set 7 focuses and 21 indices to find those most in need of help. Meanwhile, speaking about reforms to the civil service, including the introduction of a curve mechanism, some have questioned whether the measure could draw the ire of civil servants, who may not see a pay rise if they fail to reach certain targets. Chan stressed civil servants must continuously adapt as society progresses, but emphasized that the government will listen to the voices of civil servant labor unions. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A People's Liberation Army Navy fleet featuring the guided missile destroyer Nanning and the guided missile frigate Henyang will be visiting Hong Kong for 5 days from this coming Thursday. The Chinese Ministry of National Defense announced that public open days and cultural exchange activities will be held to give Hong Kong residents a closer look and in-depth understanding of the progress of national defense and military development. In July last year, another PLA naval fleet led by the Shandong aircraft carrier, including the guided missile frigate Yun Cheng and guided missile destroyer Zhangjiang, visited Hong Kong for 5 days. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.